Yo, we live. Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome to Truth Talk episode 6. And just like what the title says, we're going to go into today and discuss Mikel Arteta and his woes at Arsenal. We'll also just go over the Manchester derby. And just a little bit of a side note with the number 10 in football, I want to discuss what we think about the state of football at the moment. But we're going to start with the Arteta. We're going to start with what's actually gone wrong and can he turn things around. I've been one of those people when it comes to Arteta where I was giving him quite a bit of praise. I mean, we've seen the fragilities of Arsenal over the years. We've seen them get pammed millions of times by Man City and Liverpool. Do you know what I mean? Like brutally bullied. And he brought a little bit of steel to them, playing the three at the back. He had Nathan Knowles, Tierney playing as a centre-back, Nathan Knowles, Saka, Aubameyang, before he signed the contract, he was absolutely buzzing. He was loving life. He seemed to get something out of Xhaka. Ozil wasn't getting into the team. He did initially, but he wasn't at the end. David Luiz was playing well. What has gone wrong? I mean, if we look at it, it was destined to happen. Maybe I got a little bit excited myself. I mean, I'm a United fan, so I wasn't getting excited for Arsenal doing well, but maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves. He's been schooled by Pep. But all of a sudden, we saw a Mourinho-type manager. Do you know what I mean? Win at all costs, set game plan. And for me, I personally just thought that the guy was setting up the way that he did in those big games because he's seen the fragilities of Arsenal. But he would have learned quite a bit from Pep and have his own philosophy to be able to play on the front foot when it comes to playing like your teams, like on the weekend, like your Burnley. But it's gone completely wrong. And I'm going to break down exactly my thoughts, exactly why I think that it has actually gone wrong and whether I think he can actually turn it round. So, start of the season, I had a nice little win against Fulham. Everyone was buzzing. Signed Willian, everyone was happy. They signed Partey, everyone was buzzing. But it only told half the story for me. And this is where you can either stick or twist with Arteta. Because they got Willian, and Edu's the sporting director, I think. So I'm sure that he would have had a lot to do with it. I'm sure Arteta would have been happy enough with the signing, but I'm sure that wouldn't have been his first choice. So they signed Willian, and that's a good solid signing. He's to say in hindsight that Willian was a bad signing just because he's not played as well for Arsenal, but it's not a bad signing. Giving him a 3-year contract, that's where you look into it and you think, how can you give somebody, I think he's 32, a 3-year contract on like over 200k? That seems to me ludicrous for a team. That's not a massive, that doesn't spend. But when I started to question or started to, I wouldn't say worry for Arsenal, but if I was an Arsenal fan, I'd start to worry, is the fans started to throw parties because of signed Partey. Now, very good player, but my thing was, why on earth would you sign Partey on the last day of the transfer window when he's had a buyout clause all the transfer window? It says to me, and we look back now, that was to paper over the cracks and basically to appease the fans. Because in general, if they brought him early, that would have given them enough time to then pursue Arteta's other target, which was Oreo. I've probably got the name wrong, but for Leon. And they missed out of him. They wouldn't put the money up for him. And for Arteta, he obviously saw Partey and Oreo as his middle two, as two of the middle. Instead, he's had to carry on with Xhaka. He's had to, Partey's been in and out of the team, and then El Nene's been back. Do you know what I mean? So there's a lot there's a lot more to it than just thinking that Arteta is an absolute dud. But another thing that I will say, though, if you are somebody who thinks that that Arteta should be out, I was about to say Ollie because that's all I ever say is Ollie out. But in general, this trusting the process thing, to me, it's an absolute joke when we're talking about trusting a process. Because for me, with the run of results, with where Arteta are, you can't really trust this particular process. I mean, Wigan won an FA Cup a few seasons ago, so let's move away from the cups. This now is literally relegation form. And when we're talking about a process, normally the person who's showing you the process is normally somebody of great experience where you can see that they can potentially turn it around. All we've seen with Arteta at the moment is literally a guy that's been schooled, I say schooled in the Pep Guardiola, but literally plays like a Jose Mourinho, but without the quality and without the quality of management as well. It's not as perfect to say a Jose Mourinho defensive setup either. There's too many flaws in it. Do you know what I mean? It's a cross between highly defensive and then trying to attack. He doesn't really know how to do it as a massive counter-attacking team like you can see with Jose's doing at Spurs right now. So when we say trust the process, sometimes we use these words. It's a little bit like when LVG was talking about philosophy, and all of a sudden everyone started to use the word philosophy. I even started to use the word philosophy. But now this trusting of the process, we need to put things into context when we're talking about trusting the process. Number one, you've got to trust the process when it comes to how much your club's willing to spend for this particular manager. If you know that you're tightening your loose string or whatever, the bootstring or whatever, and you're not looking to loosen your money or anything like that, then you need the right manager who's going to know that you're not going to get much money to spend, and you need to know that he's good enough to do enough with the players that he's got, who's on a small budget. There's no proof in this with Arteta. So when we say trust the process, what is the process? If they do have loads of money and they are able to spend, what are they trusting the process in? Like, there hasn't been any evidence of Arteta in the league putting a string of wins together. I mean, I think they finished 9th last season. They started off badly. This season. There's no evidence of it. So when we say about trusting the process, this is one of those things that it's one of my bugbears where I started to think, what do we mean? Like at Manchester United, trusting the process from Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, there's no evidence of that. If you're Liverpool and you're saying trusting the process, well, you could see within the first 6 months whether he had an inferior team to many and whether there was a lot of high-scoring games. The process with Jurgen Klopp was there for all to see, whether it was 3-3 or whatever. The trounced Man City, who was like one of the best teams at the time. I remember going to I didn't go to the Etihad, but I'm just saying I remember going to the Etihad and just they destroyed them. Do you know what I mean? So you can see the process there, and because the proof was in the pudding. You get what I'm saying? So the proof was in the pudding there. The proof was in the pudding for Pep, even in his first season. They were still playing good football. You could see with a few signings, there'll be quality. But this trusting of the process with some of these younger managers, I can even go into Lampard. There's a reason to trust Lampard's process. In the first season, I didn't buy into the whole, they didn't get a transfer window, because to me, they was able to still sign 2 signings anyway. But we won't get into that anyway. But just in general, you can see the style of play that Frank Lampard's trying to bring to Chelsea. Him and Jody Morris are trying to bring to Chelsea. There's players that want to come because of Frank Lampard's name. Thiago Silva said he came because of the Frank Lampard name, and they're playing good football. There's a process there that me as a chairman, I would be trusting. But there's a lot of people, I think there's a lot of people now turning around and changing their mind as Arsenal fans. But there's a lot of people trust the process. And I'm kind of like, I think a lot of the time, I think that they don't want to go back on Wenger, and they don't want to admit that they were going in too hard on Wenger, like too hard. I understand the frustration, but they were going in too hard. So they've tried it with Emery, and they tried to give him a chance. And they're trying their best with Arteta, and they've even given him, they'll probably give him even longer. But for me, Arteta's not a better manager than Wenger. He hasn't proven anything. So what's the process that they need to trust? So I want to know what people think on that part. Like, when it comes to managers and this process, what are we asking for in the process? You hear it a lot of the time in the studios and before football, like trusting the process and giving a manager time and this and that. But sometimes you have to be like kind of cutthroat. You sometimes have to think to yourself, You know, the budget's not great, but with these type of players, we can still do something in this league. You know, Arteta's inexperienced. Maybe I can't trust this process. Maybe I need to go for tried and tested. And Arsenal fans ain't going to like me for it. But at the end of the day, ex-England manager Sam Allardyce is one. Do you know what I mean? There's obviously plenty around the world. There's plenty. You know, there's Allegri, there's Poch. I'm not sure if Poch will go to Arsenal. I'm not too sure, but there is Allegri, and there's guys like that. But would you want him to come halfway through the season with this particular squad that needs picking up? You know, it's a real difficult one. Do you get Henry? Vieira's just been sacked by Nice. So they're caught in a rock and a hard place because it's hard to know where to go. But for me, can Arteta turn it round? If given the funds and given the players that he wants, I do believe that he can. He's shown certain signs where, you know, I knew that when we played them, there was going to be a difficult team, and you know, that's how the game turned out. But I think that there's a lot of pretenders in that team, and it's going to take a lot of money. You've got a lot of players that were still there from the Wenger times, pretenders. And if I was an Arsenal fan, that would be my thing. If Arteta's got 250 mil to 300 mil to spend, then he can get him out of this. Do you know what I mean? If you give him 80 million in January, I think potentially he can get him out of this. But if you're not willing to give him the money, then you need to get someone there to stop the rot. And whether that is Sam Allardyce, you need to get him in quick. So that then brings me into, when we talk about boring football, that then brings me into the Manchester derby, the Snorefest, and it brings me into my other topic of conversation, and that was like the death of the number 10. And it's kind of like half, like it feels like not the death of football. I don't want to go too over the top, but how excited are we during a game? Like the build up, we're excited and stuff like that, but how excited are we before the game? Do we look at the players and we think, I can't wait for him to get the ball, he's gonna, you know what I mean? Because it's like this in this country absolutely, I've listened on the radio, they absolutely destroy Neymar, you know. But this guy makes the game of football beautiful. Like, just when he gets the ball, you know, trying to drop his shoulder against 2 or 3 guys or whatever. But I just, you know, the Manchester derby was one of them where it was just literally 2 systems, and it was disappointment from Pep Guardiola, because normally he doesn't tend to stay away from his normal attacking Man City, but even he's now worried about that Man City team. And I look at it and I'm like, and I question myself as well. Like, I'm looking at some of these best players in the world, supposed to be the best players in the world, and I'm like, am I calling them the best players in the world because they're good at attacking, the numbers are good, but they're good at defending? And I started to think to myself, that's what it is. I'm judging players differently now. So when I'm talking about, say, Sadio Mane or Salah or someone like that, I'm like, in today's football, they're more effective than Ronaldinho. But Ronaldinho is the person who's going to get me out of my seat, and I'm excited every time he gets the ball. So it's kind of like we've gone into an era where, I mean, we've got VAR. VAR is bad enough as it is. Do you know what I mean? That's not going to make football enjoyable. You've got to think, even if it's against my own team, the Aguero goal, imagine that adulation would have stopped because they wouldn't be too sure if he's going to be offside or not. So they would have stopped, and there would have been this old hold up, and it's lost a lot through that. But I look at it now, and I'm like, yeah, I don't want to act like I'm a, you know, dinosaur football. I understand that you have to have systems, and you know, you can't just go gung-ho with 2 strikers anymore. I completely understand that. But now I look at it and I'm just kind of like, do any players actually get me up off my seat, like now? Or do I just think that this player is absolutely amazing because, you know, he's got great numbers because of the system, you know, that start again thing, like pass. It's like being a robot, isn't it? Like, so you pass. You've already got it programmed in, so there's no option forward. So I'm going to pass it back to my defender. We're going to start again. Wait for the opposition to come out of position. Then we're going to hit them, and then, you know, back post or in the box, we're going to get the ball in and, you know, side foot or whatever. And I look at it and I'm just kind of like, what has happened? And the Manchester derby was one of those games. Now, I criticise Ollie, but one thing about Ollie is because he's so poor in like today's management, which sounds like I'm going at him, but literally, I think that he's still got his old school mentality where it's kind of like, guys, just go out and express yourself. I don't really need to tell you too much. Just go out and express yourself. And in a way, it's kind of noble. It's shit for us in today's football, but it's kind of noble. So that's why we are kind of like Ollie going to freestyle, I've heard people say, because it is kind of like just freestyle, whereas everyone's got a system, so they are going to look better than us. And in today's football, that is today's football. That's why we won't stand out. We'll only stand out when individual brilliance happens. That's why Bruno's doing well, and that's why, say, a Rashford will do well at a certain point, because literally he'll just try to shoot from 30 odd yards or whatever, and he'll have no one shouting him or anything like that. Whereas the other teams, there's these systems, boom, 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 start again, pass it back to the defender, make sure that, you know, make sure you're back in position. And you look at it and you're like, the stars today, I don't want to say too much about Mane, because I think I just like how Mane plays, but there's a lot of players that, because of their system, is actually making them appear better than they actually are. But that is today's football. So when I'm talking about like the death of the number 10, it's like Jack Grealish, he's took Southgate literally a season and a half to realise that he's by far our best player, along with Harry Kane at the moment. And you got players who are system footballers, and I've been bigging up Sterling for a while, but the more I watch, the more I realise that the system that he's seeing, and this is today's football, am I seeing him dribble past 2-3 players? Is he getting me off my feet? Or is he going to, you know, try to drop the shoulder, then pass a move, which is fine. Make sure he works hard back. Make sure he's on the back post for De Bruyne. Does he get me off my seat now? Whereas Jack Grealish, that's a player that gets me off my seat. As soon as he gets the ball, I'm thinking he's going to do something more clever than the norm. Do you know what I mean? Like Kevin De Bruyne, luckily enough, he doesn't fully follow everything that like Pep might tell him to do, to be fair. He expresses himself a little bit more, but it's not like what a Jack Grealish is, where I can see him like beat 2-3 players, strong, deceptively quick. And I was just looking around the whole of Europe, and I was just looking around. I'm looking at the tens or the wingers, and I'm judging them, and I'm like, does that guy work hard enough? Does he work hard enough back? And that's what football's turned into, because it's such a financial juggernaut, especially the Premier League, where look at I know there's no fans, but look at the top 6 games so far this season. They've all been snorefests because of the fear of not losing. So it's kind of like everyone's set up in their system, and it's kind of like there's no expression, there's no kind of let's just go for it. Do you know what I mean? The only time that you do it is when you go a goal down. Do you know what I mean? So I don't know, man. It's one of them. It's not even a sale grace because United aren't the best right now or whatever. I've been thinking this for like a number of years anyway, like the last few years especially. You could even say a lot of it might have started from the Pep Guardiola era, but at the end of the day, he had Lionel Messi or whatever, but his was more like the tiki-taka, pass. But Lionel Messi, if you're able to beat 3 or 4 players, you don't teach that. Cristiano Ronaldo, if you shoot from 30 to 40 yards or whatever, drop your shoulder past 2, you can't teach that. They kept everything exciting. I mean, who watches the La Liga game now? Do you know what I mean? Like you used to. You look at it now and you're like, you know, back in the day when you had Rivaldo, Mendieta, all those sort of players, you'd watch it all, like Ronaldinho. The list got Valeron. At it wasn't Sociedad. I forgot who it was now. There was Valeron, there was Riquelme, these number 10s, there was Zidane. You know, there's just nobody like that. There's no one with that sort of personality now. So along with VAR, this is what takes. I understand it's modern football, and I understand that this is what they're teaching the youngsters right now. This is exactly what they're teaching them now. Do you know what I mean? If it's not on, you know, pass it back. If it's not on, start again, blah, 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 blah. But I'm like, the beautiful game, a lot of these players that football evolves, but a lot of these players that made me excited to watch football, a lot of them today, not so much with the strikers, but with, like, say, the number 10s or whatever, or your wide men, many of them just wouldn't be what they are, like what they were in today's football anyway, not in the top teams anyway, because I think with the systems that, say, a Pep plays, or, a Jurgen Klopp plays, don't get me wrong, the numbers are great, the passing's immaculate, it's brilliant, it's quick, it's aggressive, but the actual individual brilliance, the number 10, the one to put the foot on the ball, slow the game down, make the game fun to watch. Yeah, it's kind of gone. But that is today's football at the end of the day. And when you then look at, say, your Mikel Arteta, he's literally a modern manager. And to go back to the point about that, he's part of what today's football is about. So, you got Mesut Ozil. He's had loads of false dawns at Arsenal, but for him to not even get a sniff, to be left out of the league squad, Mesut Ozil, it just shows that there's no room for that type of player anymore. There is literally no room for it. But without those type of players, this is what I'm trying to say about, like, the risk and reward part. And don't get me wrong, I still watch football, but sometimes, of course I watch football, but I'm like, sometimes I want to ask the question, like, which league would we say is actually the most exciting? Because for me, it's like this league, it's like the Premier League. We talk about this Ralph Hasenhüttl, like, he's got Southampton playing well, he's got them playing really well. You know what I mean? He's set up with this pressing system, he's playing with his two strikers, two banks of four, the press, suffocate the pitch, blah, 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 blah. And their games just aren't, for me anyway, this is what I'm trying to say. I'm an older fan, so I've seen more football. If it's today's footballers, today's youngsters or whatever, this is normal. Everything's normal. But when you've seen things before, you kind of see it's just suffocating the pitch, pass, pass it back slow, and then pass it back, speed things up. But it's just the individual part that I kind of like missed from those number 10s. But at the end of the day, it's still football. We still watch it. So yeah, guys, I want you guys to smash a like anyway and subscribe. I want to know what you guys think. The main thing is on Arteta. What do we think? Do we think that this guy can turn things around? Do you think that there is a situation where we should be trusting, the way Arsenal fans should be trusting the process? Or do you just think that is just literally a taboo word that everyone keeps using with no real foundation? And I'm on to the next one, guys. Remember, smash a like and subscribe. See you later.